All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record. Today's episode is one of those, rare conversations where farming, clean power, soil health, and just overall systemic change all come together under one philosophy. So that philosophy is do right by the land and it'll do right by us. So today I'm joined by Iain Ward, the founder of Solar Agricultural Services, also known as SolAg, a company pioneering agrivoltaics. If you've never heard that word before, it's about time you did, and we've got the right person to explain it to you. So, Iain, great to have you on. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing so well. Happy and honored to be here with you today, talking about something that we love talking about: land, people, resources, energy. Yeah, really cool stuff.
Exactly. It's a fun conversation. I can tell you're excited for it. So I'll jump straight in because I kind of want to rewind at first, just so that everyone kind of gets the idea of where you came from, because you were a farmer before, you were a consultant, and before you were even talking about, solar fields. What was the turning point for you that led to the idea behind Solar Egg or Soul Egg?
Well, really, I mean, it goes back to when I was a child. My grandmother taking us for walks in the to visit farms and visit the cows. She's from Scotland, so we go for walks to visit the wee cowies. And when you watch those farms disappear, which they started to disappear. In my neck of the woods, there's a lot of pressure on residential housing, and that's a wonderful thing for people to live. Also, it means that you need a place to put those houses, and often it's the farmland that sustains us. So I watched that happen and recognized that for me, if I could help as an environmental background type of guy, if I could help keep farmers in business, then the land that they're supporting, all those rolling farm fields and the beautiful wetlands that they have and the streams going through their land would also be supported and wouldn't be lost
Mhm.
to the last crop. The last crop is that house. The last crop is that data center or whatever the development is. So that's what brought me into the world of farming. And I tried to buy two different farms at two different times myself because I had a dream about having a goat pull me in a little wagon when I was a kid. I saw a picture like that and I'm like, that's what I want. And it turned out that I couldn't do that with an upland farm. I couldn't compete with development prices. So I ended up buying a wetland. I bought a cranberry bog, and that's where I raised my family and farmed the backland that was, got my fix on cows and sheep and pigs and all the crops on some backland that I could farm as a hobby. The commercial crop was cranberries. And
Mhm.
as the SMART program in Massachusetts came about, which aligned, I was on the farming side of things. So farmers, as a technical service provider through NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, that environmental side of things was really strong. I was doing conservation plans for farmers, eventually became a farmer myself, as I mentioned, and help farmers negotiate with land diversification techniques, solar being one of them. I didn't
Mm.
love the trees coming down. I didn't love farm fields being lost, but I could see that it was a part of keeping the rest of the farm viable. So I helped farmers do that and eventually got good at understanding solar and how already had the farming background. So when the SMART program, Massachusetts is the first state in the nation to have an incentive for dual use, which is that fancy word you're saying,
Mhm.
agrivoltaics, which is very simply growing crops, producing livestock under panels, under solar panels. So you're doing two things, providing food and providing electrons. That's what agrivoltaics is. That's what dual use is. That's what kind of brought me into this field.
That's amazing. And I mean, you kind of touched on the idea that I was slowly going to be projecting towards, but you said that solar companies were doing things a little bit differently. Why did you originally feel like solar projects and solar developers were getting it wrong? What made you think that there was a better way?
I Also, there's the idea of harvesting the sun, producing electrons. It's a phenomenal idea, and it's something that the early adopters on solar, man, kudos to them for thinking outside the box and the technology to let that happen. I think because it was like there's a fine line between reducing carbon and having regenerative, renewable energy and putting it and doing it in such a manner that really disrupts the ecosystem that it was put into. Should you cut down 40 acres of trees and habitat to put in solar? I was told by developers that arguably it would had the carbon footprint was significantly less by cutting those trees down, what the carbon that was sequestered from those trees was not nearly as much as the carbon that was sequestered by not burning fossil fuels. While
Fair
in theory
enough.
that makes good sense, in fact, it's probably correct, it just didn't resonate that we should destroy one environment to create something that's a human-made thing to offset something that we're creating elsewhere, right? We're creating an
Exactly.
issue elsewhere, so that you could do two things. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, all good and well-intentioned people, well-intentioned industry. There were some things that didn't resonate with me or other environmentalists or other farmers. Solar competed with for prime farmland, and that's
Hmm.
a if I didn't know about agrivoltaics, I didn't know the possibilities of growing crops under panels and the benefits that come from the partial shade, the benefits that come from the water that's retained, the lower evapotranspiration, even in the Northeast. And I've seen projects in the Southwest and in the West. These are real environmental benefits for the farmer. And if I didn't
Hmm.
know that farmers that would otherwise be kicked off the land could get paid to farm, because that's also what happens. The landowner can get paid, and the farmer, who sometimes is a landowner, sometimes is not. 50% of the time they're not. If I didn't know all these things and all the possibilities of agrivoltaics, then I would be right there saying no solar and prime farmland.
Hmm.
But I do know that there's an alternative, and that's what we're here talking about.
Fair enough. And I mean, I think one of the things that I got really excited for when we met earlier was how you talked about replacing chain link fences with livestock fencing and paying farmers of what you're talking about, paying farmers what they'd otherwise earn from mowing. That idea blew my mind. Can you give us a few practical examples of how this plays out on real projects?
Yeah. Well, you just named it. It's real. It's not theory anymore. Like we've proven out that this works both in a state where there is an incentive and in states where there's not incentives, right? So when there's a state with an incentive, there is a carrot, and it can be significant. And if you farm in a particular way, if you approach these projects in a particular way, and you comply with what the state or the program is saying to do. In this case, it's Massachusetts and New Jersey, and there's other states that are starting to look into it as well. Then great. If there's states that are not, there's no incentive, but there is perhaps a more certain regulatory path. If you are really aligned with a community and you're not putting up what might be looked at as a prison, if you
Hmm.
can if you can the truly work with a landowner, not just like say, hey, our policy is that we contribute to the local school system. And essentially that's development 101, right? You contribute some monetary amount of money to a community, and therefore you get favoritism on a permit and you move forward. And yes, there are some ancillary benefits to business as usual with solar development.
Hmm.
There are, I would argue, more ancillary benefits if you approach projects an agricultural community with an agricultural project. When the farmer that is looking eyeball to eyeball with the planning board, the zoning board, or the county board, and they look at them and they say, are you sure you're going to be able to grow crops in there? And that farmer looks back and says, honestly, I'm not sure, but I'll figure it out.
Exactly.
That's Yankee ingenuity, right? We will figure out how to make it work. And it's the most honest answer. But what we found is that it is working, right? And we are figuring out. So one of those things that if you don't like the look of solar, agrivoltaics, growing crops, it doesn't really change it. It's still solar panels. Like if you think they're ugly, they're still ugly. If you think they're beautiful, they're beautiful. It's whatever the perception is. What we're talking about though is the land itself is not degraded when you're doing construction. So let's talk about how to build these projects so that the soil compaction is minimized
Exactly.
in the first place, right? The things that help the farmer, like water, maybe there's a water line that's put in, maybe there's a well that's put in, maybe there's not a need for irrigation anymore because the microclimate changes that. It depends on every region that you're in. You mentioned the chain link fence. Typically, there's a 6-foot chain link fence around the entire array, and it says keep out.
Hmm.
We're saying, what if you change that to a deer fence to keep the deer out? A livestock fence, a woven wire fence that's actually cheaper than a chain link fence, right? You can make it so that you keep animals in that you want to, domesticated animals. You keep deer and other quote, quote, pests out of that area so you can really foster the crop. It looks better. You can barely see it except for the posts if you're a neighbor. It looks agricultural, right? You get to see, it doesn't look like a prison, like with chain link fence with barbed wire on top. No, because we're inviting farmers in. We're inviting
Hmm.
farmers in, and they are the long-term operating and maintenance folks that are the eyes and ears for that project. So it helps the solar developer
Hmm.
is because we're still farming, because we're still applying manure or fertilizers, because we're still engaged with irrigation, the local supplier of those things is still engaged. You're looking at a small project, 30 acres, maybe not so much of an impact. But 3,000 acres, now we're starting to be an impact.
Hmm.
The person that spreads lime, that we're talking about doing all the same things that the farm does now, just in and around panels.
It's huge. That's a fascinating idea, right? Because solar developers are already spending money on, grading, fencing, maintenance. Agrivoltaics just kind of relocates those costs in smarter ways. Are there any areas where you mentioned the sizing of it, but is there any other areas where it might make more sense to go the AG route, or are there some areas where it wouldn't actually make sense and you would genuinely step away from a project?
So I mean, I subscribe to the basics, right? Honor the land, honor those working the land, and then honor the thing that you're putting onto the land,
Mhm.
right? So if you look at those three approaches, honor the land, what has the land been used for in the past? If it's a rocky slope, it's probably not great for much of anything other than grazing. It's probably
Mhm.
not great for solar in the first place. If it's a pre-forested area, maybe that why was it not farmed in the first place?
Mhm.
Probably is not suitable for farming. Most of the land that was farmed, that is the best prime farmland, is currently still farmed. So start there. If it's prime farmland, that's where you should consider agrivoltaics. And in my mind, that's the debate right now. Farmers are on board with putting solar in the back nine on the worst ground where I can't do anything else.
Mhm.
That's okay if it's standard solar and you're going to not do anything with it. Agrivoltaics and the approach that we're looking at is different. We're talking about sequestering that land for the next 40 years, where the life of the solar panel is 40 years. When I say sequestering it, is it's not going to be developed. It's going to be lost to solar. It's not going to be lost to AI. I mean, the good news is for farmland, farm owners near development areas, is that there's big bucks when it comes to warehouses and AI centers and resident development. That's not necessarily, it's good for them, good for their legacy. That's wonderful. In private property rights, we have the right to do that in this country. The legacy of food producing soils that are lost is what I'm most keen into helping to slow down. Just like I was saying, that farmland that my grandmother brought me to, the only thing left of that is Silo Lane. Literally, the road name is Silo Lane. That's the
Mhm.
only thing that brings you back to a farm, and there's 40 plus houses on there. If we do solar in the right way, which has been proven out that you can, then you're basically taking the development aspect off the table for the next 20 to 40 years.
Mhm.
And if you honor the land in the first place and you don't bulldoze it, you keep that prime soil intact. You take measures to bury cables so you have clear access down each row. When you're burying those cables, you're separating the topsoil, the organic matter from the subsoil, and you're backfilling subsoil first and topsoil second. You're allowing for truck access in and around the array. Then you're actually fostering the agricultural activity on this land. And if there's a carrot or a stick, if you say this is an agrivoltaic project, then you know it has to be farmed. It's not just lip service. It has to be farmed. So that 63-year-old person that's selling that property or that's looking to retire as the farmer, the generational farmer, they've earned the right to live out their golden years. We've just sequestered that land for the next 20 to 40 years. It's got to be farmed. That opens up an opportunity for the next generation. We
Mhm.
have this gap right now of people that are in the know and that have the land resources and people that want to know and don't have the land resources. And I view agrivoltaics as a beautiful way to combine those two things. Have the prior owner, prior farmer, or aging out farmer be a mentor, the next generation coming in. Have
Mhm.
1, 2, 5, 10 farmers under that array learning, growing, and expanding upon their production. All the while, there's an opportunity to talk about regenerative practices. If we're looking at
Mhm.
truly, we honor in this land, let's talk about honoring the land through farming practices that build organic matter, don't detract from it. So the land part, the farmer, the next generation, getting some of the kids, the next generation owners back to the farm when there's a stable source of income coming in from that array, and they're keeping their crops and they're starting to grow things. Maybe they're growing things like soy and hay and sorghum Sudan and other commodity type crops. Maybe not cow corn, because that might be a little bit tall. The only limiting factor being what might shade the panel is really the only limiting factor of what crop you can grow. But that's the opportunity. Reinvigorate, revitalize the farm families and provide opportunity for viability for beginning farmers.
That's massive. And then for developers who are probably listening right now, especially those, skeptical of the added complexity, what's the ROA case for doing things differently? The ROI case, sorry.
Overall, it's yet to be determined. Like I could sugarcoat it, but why sugarcoat it? We're just being real. This is a new approach. There's not a ton of data saying that you should do it this way, you should do it this way. If when I was in DC, people are like, well, will this work? What's the ROI? What's the return from the farmers? How much production are they going to get? I don't know. Let's ask the farmer. Let's give them the opportunity to try to do it. I can tell you that we're finding on projects that we've got 2-3 years worth of data on that it takes a year to figure out that you've got some soil decompaction to handle.
Hmm.
You've got a learning curve of how to operate the equipment, what passes you make, how fast you run the tractor onto the panels. The first couple of times you're white knuckling it going through. And once you get more acclimated to the environment, just like anything else, there's a learning curve. So we're right now, any data, I would suggest that any data, good or bad or indifferent, right now it's too soon. The question is, do we want to allow it to happen and find out over time and study it over time, or do we not? So
Mhm.
in my mind, re-ask that question and I'll give you a very succinct answer as I'm like winding out.
Okay. Well, honestly, I think you got it, to be honest with you. I don't really know if there's too much of a way to, repackage that because I think you work with a very specific kind of client. So for them to really understand it, they'll get the technical side of things. But I mean, I think the more interesting side of things that'll help answer that question as well is because you said you're kind of a bridge between the solar developers and the farmers. Like you're not a developer, you're not a lobbyist. So what does your role look like day to day?
So, yeah, it is that bridge. It is the what if. What are the opportunities that can be provided from looking at things with a slightly different perspective? Like going back to one of your original questions about what's in this for solar developers and what the challenge. There's an opportunity to relook at how EPC contractors approach construction. Agrivoltaics on the surface, if you've changed nothing else, can be a hassle. Like
Hmm.
we don't have proven data yet that we're going to have X plus or X minus crop, right? Because we just, again, I could sugarcoat it. I could tell you that in experimental plots, it looks great. Experimental plots of
Mhm.
soy, the soy looked better than the soy outside of the array with 1 year's worth of data. 1 year. So this is why UC Davis, this is why Cornell, this is why Rutgers, why UMass are not saying here are the best management practices and here's what you can expect, because it's new. But what we're finding is that some of the shade tolerant crops are doing really well. Some of the sun loving crops like tomatoes are doing really well because the sun is more strong, it seems, now than it was 30 years ago. So
Mhm.
you're getting some scald things. Understanding on the surface, developers, solar developers could look at this saying, this is kind of a pain in the rear. It's kind of new, kind of a pain in the rear. There are more moving parts. We just want to do business as usual and keep things going. You're muddying the waters, Iain, by bringing this stuff up. That is the case, actually, if you change nothing. But if you don't if you are open to changing, change is constant, but change is also things that people resist. But if you're open to changing and thinking about how can I approach contracting differently? Do I need to spend hundreds or millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on grading? Or can I save that because I'm not going to grade? And I put that savings into solar panel technology that allows for changing, undulating land.
Hmm.
Let's,
Fair
is that
enough.
possible? If we can do that, and then we think, can we, oh, burying the cables costs more money than grinding them on top. But if what are the soft costs? If you go to a permitting authority and they reject you, or the community shows up with pitchforks, and like, what are the soft costs? Attorneys, lobbies, all folks that have to be aligned to help you get a permit. If those, because the farmer's like, I got this, and the permitting authorities believe them, and the neighbor's like, well, we trust them more than we trust the developers. So I'm willing to, I'm not loving the solar, but I like the landowner, I like the farmer. I see that this is viable for their family. I'll put my pitchfork away. What's the soft cost there? That could be considered a savings. That's a different approach. Long term, how much money do you spend on mowing the grass or preventing fire? Right? It's either way. With Southwest, you're preventing fire, and Northeast, you're preventing weeds. Same difference. Your vegetation management. Is there an opportunity? You know what you have to pay, what you've historically paid. You know what you
Hmm.
historically pay for drones and operating and maintenance folks to check on things. If that farmer calls you up because it's a combiner box that looks like it's sparking, how much money is that saving you? Before you've got eyes and ears that are not being compensated for all the time that they would be if they were an O&M provider that are there on site.
Hmm.
Let's start thinking, and this is what progressive developers are thinking about. They're right now, the political climate as it is, and there's some pressure in the U.S. on solar, and probably for the right reasons. And what we're trying to do is spread the message that while those reasons might be right, for that is considered solar of old, and there's a different way of doing it. And I think out of necessity, my hope is that out of necessity, necessity is the mother of invention, that agrivoltaics and this approach really is fast tracked, not in a greenwashing way, but an actual way of like, we're here to foster the land and the farmer and the solar third, although the solar is paying for the other two things to happen in a conducive way. Honoring that process is the difference between progressive developers and developers that may not be around for long if they don't change the way they're doing things in this current political environment.
That makes sense. And then just like out of curiosity, who's your ideal partner or client and how do they usually find you?
Word of mouth. We typically, we're just, this is a fledgling approach. There are some great people, academic researchers at institutions across the country, the National Renewable Energy Lab, American Farmland Trust, there's an NGO. There's alignment to say, this is what, if you want to do solar, please do it this way. Please have,
Hmm.
have smart the solar siting guides. Research that NREL's been doing for 10 years is supporting this stuff. Yeah, for people to learn about it, we do these kinds of things. We do a podcast and talk about it. And it's more than anything, it's asking questions, right? Can we approach this differently? And farmers are our largest clients. Developers are hiring us because we connect with farmers.
Hmm.
Whether the farmer pays us or developer pays for us, it's almost irrelevant because we're aligned with the land and the farmer. And that's what makes good development, solar development happen from our perspective.
Fair enough. Well, that's huge. And then lastly, where can people go to learn more or connect with SolAg?
Yeah, I mean, we have a website, solaragservices.com. We should probably be on a lot of social media. We're not. We got a LinkedIn page, so people are welcome to reach out through you to connect with us through the Solar Ag Services, through LinkedIn. We have basically, it's talk with a developer that that's doing agrivoltaics, or ask them questions. They will probably come back to saying, hey, have you talked to this guy, Iain Ward? Have you talked to this company, SolAg? And there's a small handful of companies that are doing what we're doing, and we're raising all ships together.
That's
For
amazing.
for lack of self-promotion, it's more the concept that we're about, and it's a small but growing field.
That's amazing. And then what should listeners be doing if this did spark their interest, regardless if they're in solar farming or, just want to see smarter development?
Call your representatives, call your senators. Right now is a on the I guess that's kind of a default, but there's a lot of things happening politically now with the big beautiful bill in the U.S. And agrivoltaics or growing crops under solar panels could be collateral damage, could be thrown out, baby with the bathwater. I think my conversations personally, the Solar and Farming Association conversations across the nation, this concept resonates. Whether you like solar or you don't, even the folks that are proposing language that is anti-solar, they're like, this is interesting. We could get on board with this approach if it was done this way. So if you like this approach, if you are, whether you're politically affiliated or not, just call your local representative. We're in DC. We're talking about this. They're hearing it from the top down. If they hear it from farmers up and residents up, and even better if you're not a developer, but even if you are a developer, this concept is resonating. It may make the difference. There may be a carve out it's not too late. There may be that the administration who writes executive orders could write a different executive order or slightly change it to promote this concept because it so benefits the farmers and the local communities.
Fair enough. Well, I really appreciate it, guys. And, that's it for today's episode. A massive thanks to Ian for dropping by. And honestly, I know I had a call with him earlier and he blew my mind then, but for anyone listening now, I hope your minds are blown, with everything going on in the agrivoltaics and honestly just solar development space. So thank you so much, Ian, for coming on. We really, really appreciate your time and your insight.
It was an honor, man. Thank you so much and keep on going, man. It's awesome. I love it.
Fantastic. And I think what really stood out is how simple and powerful the idea is, right? So if you're in solar or AG, or if you just care about, where things are going, rewind this one, take some notes, maybe send it to someone who's building something. And if you enjoyed this conversation, give us a follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts or you're listening. There's new episodes coming your way real, real soon. So I'm Yarek. That was Ian. This is Off the Grid on the Record. Catch you guys on the next one.
Take care, all.